Good morning, Rabbi Isai. We just woke up. Whoever's sleeping, no, nobody's sleeping. Rabbi Isai, we're holding all the way in the bottom of Kuf. On the base, today's the Kuf Aleph. Gufa. If a person eats a giranasha, which is the right to eat, the sciatic nerve, the giranasha, the right rear leg has a sciatic nerve which is asur, but it also happens to be a behemoth tmeya. Rabbi Yehuda Mechayev Shtayim, we had this yesterday, we're going into it. Rabbi Yehuda says, Yechayev, there's an isser chalal isser. You could add one isser on top of another isser. First, the Gemara explained yesterday, first the animal is created. The meat of the animal is created, and then the giranasha applies itself to it. Rabbi Shimon poiter, and Rabbi Shimon says you don't get any malchus, nothing, zero. Ask the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon. I don't understand something. Simple question. How could Rabbi Shimon say you potter? Either you chayiv on the giranasha part, or you chayiv on the behemoth tmeya part. How could you just get out of this completely? Rabbi Shimon Manavshach, isser chalal isser. If one isser is chal on another, it's in other words, if you hold that yesh begidim benoisen tam, if you hold that the giranasha has flavor, so it's a tamei animal, plus it's also giranasha. L'chayv da mishum gid. So you should be chayv two. One for the meat, because it has flavor. Yesh begidim benoisen tam, it has flavor. Plus there's a gid. So you chayv on two yisurim. Yein is a chal isser. But if you hold the one that says not chal on another, it's a fine. So at least give him one isser. L'chayv mishum tuma dekadim. So at least give him for the fact that he's eating a horse. So what are you going to say? You can't be mechayev him for eating a horse. Why? Because he's eating wood. He's eating a piece of sinew. He's eating a sciatic nerve. And when you eat sciatic nerve, maybe you'll say that there's no flavor in this nerve. And if there's no flavor in the nerve, you're not chayev for behemoth tmeya. Okay. So l'chayev mishum gid. Either way you want to look at it. Either you chayev one for gid, or one for behemoth tmeya. Or two. Isser chal isser. But zero, what's the logic to say zero? Omar Rava, 6 lines down. Lo'elam kasavar ein begid b'noisen tam. No. He holds there's no flavor at all in a gid. And therefore, what are we going to get rid of? We're going to get rid of the tumah. There's no behemoth tmeya here. All we have is a gid. Nu. So at least he should be chayiv for a gid anash on a horse. No. You know why? Shani Hasan Domar Kra. Al-Kain lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael's gid anasha, because of what happened to Yaakov Avinu, Klal Yisrael doesn't need the sciatic nerve. They don't need the gid anasha. Mishagida also b'sarimut. It's mashma that you're able to eat the whole animal, just don't eat the gid anasha part. So we're talking about a kosher animal. So we have a pasuk basically that tells us that there's no gid anasha in a non-kosher animal. Mishagida asur b'sarimut. Only someone that an animal that you're allowed to eat all the meat, the Torah says, but don't eat the gid anasha. Yasazu, this horse, shegidei asur, b'sari asur. There's no reason for the Torah to say that there's isur on the gid anasha when the actual meat of the whole horse is asur. Says Reb Shimon. So bottom line, Shimon says if somebody eats a gid anasha of a horse or of a pig or any tamei animal, you putter it completely. Why? Because the gid doesn't have any flavor. So you're not chayiv for behemoth tmeya. If you were to now eat a bone, a chip of a bone, a little part of a bone from a horse, you're not chayiv. It's not meat. You're not chayiv. So the gid anasha you're not chayiv. Elamai, you want to be over. You want him to be over because of the gid anasha part. There is no isser of gid anasha on a non-kosher animal. So no, you're not over in anything. Oh, Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav, says Rav. Same idea. What if a person eats the gid anasha of a dead animal, a dead cow, let's say? Reb Meir mechayev shtayim. Reb Meir says yechayev for nevela and yechayev for gid anasha. Oh, so first I got to show you before you get all nervous. There's something called a isra koilel. If you've done daf yomi for a while, this is nothing. If not, don't get nervous. It's very simple. All it means is, For instance, an avela, you hear? An avela, the isser of an avela applies to what part of the animal? The entire animal. So it's isser koilo. The gid anasha is very specific to this little tiny part of the animal. Then comes the isser avela, and it's added to the whole animal. So the logic is very simple. If I add an isser to the whole animal, its nose, its ear, its tail, it's this, so then it could apply itself also to the gid anasha. You can't stop it. You're applying this isser to everything. So once you apply it to everything, you can just apply it also to the gid anasha. So that's why one isser could apply itself on top of another isser. When doesn't one isser apply itself to another isser? When you're talking about the sciatic nerve, and I want to apply another isser to this. I want to say, I don't know, Yom Kippur on this. I want to apply another isser besides the gid anasha. But over here, I'm applying the isser of nevela to more things, to the whole animal. So once I'm applying it to the whole animal, I can understand it also goes in the gid anasha. That's called isser koilo. There's another one that we're going to talk about called Isser Moisef. What's Isser Moisef? Isser Moisef means that I'm adding something stronger and more chomer. Let's say I'm adding Isser Karas. As the Gemara is going to explain, if I add, there's a possibility to add one Isser on top of another Isser when the second Isser adds something more stringent. Okay. So now just the video for this is the idea of Isser Chal Isser. First you have a dead donkey. You have the gid anasha. So you want to apply the Isser of the gid anasha of the Isser gid anasha on top of the donkey. Over here we have a dead cow, so it's a little different. Isser koilo. Why is it Isser koilo? Because the Isser nevela applies to the whole. I like how I did Isser nevela. It's like a cow hide. The Isser nevela applies to the whole animal, so therefore it will also apply on top of the gid. Not everybody agrees to this. As we'll see, the Rabbi Yosef Glili doesn't agree to this idea. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav, says Rav, the famous Rav Yehuda, all of Shas, he says in the name of Rav, he says in the name of Shmuel. Today it's in the name of Rav. You have an animal that dropped dead before Shechita, so it's in a Vela. Meir Mechayiv Shtayim. Meir says that this gid is Yesh Begid B'Noisen Tam. He holds that this gid gives flavor. So the gid gives flavor, the actual gid anasha is asr because of an avela. If it didn't give flavor, it wouldn't be asr for nevela. But because it's flavorable, it's nevela. Why? Because it's isser koilo, that the whole animal, not only the gid anasha part, but the whole animal is asr for nevela. So once that you put the isser of nevela on top of the first animal was born with the gid anasha before it was in nevela. Then it dropped dead. And the isser of nevela happens to the kidneys, to the heart, to the steaks, to the ear, to the nose. So it also goes on top of the gid anasha. It says, Chacham say no. There's an isser chal on isser, and since you're chayiv on a gid anasha, you cannot apply the isser of nevela on top of the isser of gid anasha. You can only be chayiv for one isser, get malchus once, not twice. Oh. Listen to this. However, if we do something called Isser Moisef, what's that? Oila is a carbon oila, you can't have any benefit from it. A shar aniskal is a bull that killed another human being, and the Bezdin said, we got to kill this bull, and you cannot benefit at all from it. Listen to this, very, very pashut. The gid anasha of this bull, a year ago, it's asr to eat the gid anasha. It didn't kill a person yet. Now it goes ahead and kills somebody. And now the gid anasha became asr bahana. You can't sell it for medical supplies or to whatever you want to do. You can't do anything with it. It's asr bahana. So no matter what, that Isser Hana applies itself on top of the Gid Hanasha. So once it applies itself on top of the Gid Hanasha, it becomes also, yesterday it was Mutar B'Hana. You could sell a Gid Hanasha to a guy, not today, because it killed a person and you have to kill the bull. And once you kill it, it's a Shar Niskal, you can't benefit from the Gid Hanasha at all. So since I applied something to it, it's a strong, stringent thing called Isser Hana. So now the Isser Hana applies itself to the Isser of Gid Hanasha. Now I have two Isurim on that Gid Hanasha. I have one Isser of Gid Hanasha, plus I have the Isser of Shar Niskal. Yeah? Maskim? Makes sense? It's different than Isser Kailo. It's Isser Moisav. I added something. Before, Isser Kailo means I added something to the rest of the animal, so let's add it also to this. Now I'm saying, no, I added something to this. You can't deny the fact that now the Gid Hanasha is Asa Ba'ana, and yesterday it wasn't. Without Isser Chalal Isser, now the Gid Hanasha is Asa Ba'ana. Shechayv Shtayim. So fine. And end the story. Chacham hold that when it comes to Shar Niskal and the Oyla, you're chayiv to who's this Tana that says, I don't hold of Isser Koilo, but I do hold of Isser Moisif? I'll just show you this Rashi, why not? We'll just read it together, why not? It's Gishmaka Rashi. When the second Isser has two things going for it, it's a Koilo and a Moisif. This animal, when it was born, the Gid Hanasha was Aser right away, but you're allowed to eat the meat. Higdisha, if you made it Kaddish, you made it the Oyla, or it killed somebody. Nesar af Besara. So now the meat became Aser, Hareze Koilo. So Rashi has explained that the Oyla and a Shar Niskal have an Isser Koilo to it, and an Isser Moisef. What just happened? I don't know, somebody touched it for a second. But this gid used to be, you could do business with it, you could sell it, give it to the guy. And when you made it Kaddish, or when it killed somebody, now it's also Ba'ana. She'in kan Isser Chalal Isser. Explains Rashi, it's not an Isser Chalal Isser. Shemasha Shia Rishon, the first Isser left over part that you were able to add something to it. Moisav Hashayni. The first Isser, you're allowed to still sell it. Now the second Isser made it also to sell. So since now that you made it Hegdish, you made this animal Oyla, so now you can't benefit from it. So now that Isser is Chal when you eat it. Shemachali is Chayiv Shtayim, that if you eat a Oyla, you Chayiv too. And listen to this is very important. This animal was Asr to eat beforehand. Hi, this one. Since there's a new part of it that just became Asr, so that Isar na is Chal on the eating part as well. Great. Zog the Gemara. Who's the man the Omar that doesn't hold of Isser Kailo? Meaning that if you add an Isser to the whole animal in the Vela, the whole animal, it also goes on the Gid Hanasha, versus if you add Isser Hana to that Gid Hanasha, then you add another Isser that's called Isser Moisef. Who holds of Isser Moisef but not of Isser Kailo? It's Rabbi Yitzhak Glili, or Rabbi Yitzhak Glili, it's none. Tomei she'ochal kodesh, ben kodesh tomei, ben kodesh tar, chayav. Oh, check this out. First of all, here's the Shar Niskal. This is Isser Kailo Chamor. In other words, we'll call it Isser Moisef. The Gemara calls it Chamor, Rashi calls it Isser Moisef. Not this yet, that's next. I thought there was another one that explains it a little more. Maybe this. Okay. When his body is tamei, and he eats kachim, he eats a carbon, and the Beis Hamikdash, he's chayiv kares, if he's tamei. If the meat is tamei, but he's not tamei, like you see on the left side, his body is green, he's not tamei, but the piece of meat, the carbon is tamei, then he's chayiv alav. So it says like this. This not smack in the middle of the amud. Tamei she'achal kodesh, a person whose body is tamei, like in the right side, he's tamei, and he's eating kachim. Ben kodesh tamei, ben kodesh tar. Whether the piece of meat that he's eating is tamei or not, chayav. He's chayav. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer. Oh, why is it? What is he chayav? Let's just see the pasuk for a second. Here. If you eat a carbon with tumasay all over your tummy, v'nichrasa, you get karas. If you yourself are tummy, if you're not tummy and the piece of meat is tummy, you don't get karas. You get a lav. But if you're tummy and you eat a piece of meat that's tummy, you hear the problem over here. Maybe you shouldn't be chayav. The piece of meat is already tummy. It's not like a real carbon maybe. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, Tamei she'achal satar chayav. If you are tamei, your body is red. Like, let's go back to this picture so we have some sort of the right side. The guy is tamei, but the piece of meat is tahar. Tamei she'achal satar chayav. But tamei she'achal satar potter. We don't have a picture of that. Maybe we do later. But if, let me see, we might have one. Here. Like this. I mean, this is coming up. The first he became tamei, and the meat is tamei. In this case, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you're not chayev. Why? Shelo yochal davar tamei. He didn't eat kachim, he ate something that's tamei. Amru lo, so they tell him, af tamei she'achal satar. Anytime a person is tamei and he eats a tar, piece of meat, what's going to happen? The piece of meat becomes tamei before he puts it in his mouth. Ask Tosfos the obvious question that everybody's thinking: what if somebody else put it in his mouth for him? So says Tosfos, no. It seems like the Gemara knew that, and the Gemara is saying no. In all situations, Rabbi Yossi Aglili is going to say that, even if he touched it with his own hand. Shapir ko amri leRabbanan Rabbi Yossi Aglili. I don't understand. It sounds like it's a good kasha that every time you eat a piece of tar meat, it becomes tamei. No, you didn't get it. You didn't understand. When a person became tamei, here, like in this case, first his body became tamei. That's number one. He became tamei, and then the piece of meat became tamei. Why? This is a kares kadam. Look, what happened first? He was a person of kares. Anytime at that point that he's tamei, if he went to eat any piece of meat, he'd be chayiv kares. So the fact that the meat became tamei afterwards, too bad, you get kares. This is a kares kadam. First, there's a kares. Keep ligi, but where's the machloikas? The machloikas is the opposite. You have a person who's tar. You have a piece of meat that's tar. The piece of meat became tamei first. At this point, if he ate it, what would be chayiv rabbis if he ate the piece of meat now? Only a lav, only iser lav. Rabbanon Islu. Now look at this. Now he became tamei. Number two, he became tamei. Say Rabbanon say he became. It's an iser kailo. Why? Why is this an iser kailo? Rabbi say. We know what iser kailo is. It's not so hard. What's iser kailo? This person, when he became tamei, now he's also to all the meats in the world, all kachim in the world. Not just this particular piece in front of him on the screen. Maybe that's called Iser kailo. The migui, the mechayiv achaticha is tahir is the alma. Since he's chayiv, if he eats any piece of kachim in the world, mechayiv nami achaticha tmeyos, he should also be chayiv on this piece of meat on the screen that became tamei before he became tamei. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, let's the Iser kailo. So over here you see it's Rabbi Yossi Aglili who doesn't believe in Iser kailo because he says you're not chayiv on this piece of meat. The migui amrinon. You don't say migui. But he would agree in an Isser Moisif, when it's an Isser Chamor, like Asr Bahana, then Rabbi Yossi Aglili would agree. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Nihidis, or Koileles, Leibis, or Kal. He asked the Gemara, okay, fine. In this case, it's a easy Isser. Yova Isser Chamor, Yochal Isser Kal. Umay Neo, Tumas Haguf. Shari Tumas Haguf, Bekaras. Wait a minute. Why don't we say that the fact that he's Tomei, he became Tomei, and he has a kares that's very, very severe. So that's called the Isser Moisef. Why shouldn't it be Chayev now? The fact that he's a kares guy. Amar Ravashi, Man Leimelon the Tumas Haguf Chamura. Who told you the fact that he's Chayiv Kares, that makes him more stringent? Maybe the fact that the meat is also, that's worse than him being Kares. Why? The less late tahara b'mikvah, you cannot take this piece of meat and put it in a mikvah and make it tar, but you could put a human being in a mikvah and make a human being tar. Zog the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Leslie is a kailal. I don't understand. Rabbi Yossi Aglili doesn't hold to this that you add the Isser is more expansive. It's wider. It doesn't apply. But Tanya, Shabbos v'Yom Kippurim. If somebody is Michal Shabbos and Yom Kippur, Shagag v'Asav Melacha. He did one Melacha on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. He didn't know that it's Shabbos and Yom Kippur, and he lit a fire. He gets, if they warned him, let's say, a chatas, let's say. He did it, they didn't warn him. It's chayiv a chatas for Shabbos and a chayiv a chatas for Yom Kippur. Talmud loymar Shabbos he, Yom Kippurim who. For each one, he. It's individual. Yom Kippur is all by itself. You chayiv for each one. Did Rabbi Yossi Aglili. That's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Oh, so calls Rabbi Yossi Aglili and says you chayiv two. Why chayiv two? Because it's a koilo. Why is it a koilo? So let's see Rashi for a second. B'Shabbos b'Reish Ksiv, the Mashma Shimba, the first Shabbos, the Mashma Shimba Yisur Acher, Imo Yischav al Shmo b'Fnei Yazuk Ksiv. I just wanted to read from here. V'chein Gabi Yom Ged Ksiv Hu, V'ani Yisur Bas Achas Nino. So Rashi asks a bomb kasha, which really the Gemara addresses later on. But asks Rashi, I don't understand something. Of course, Yichayev too. There's nothing to do with Isser Moisev and Isser Koilo. We already learned yesterday that when the animal is created, the first moment is created, and there's a gida nasha and there's meat, Yichayev too. Why? Because they happen simultaneously. Anytime an Isser happens simultaneously, Yichayev too. It's only because the Gemara later said, no, first, when an animal is formed, first the meat is formed, and later on, a month later, the sinews are formed. That's why it doesn't happen simultaneously. But over here, Yom Kippur and Shabbos, when do they come? They come together. Whenever the Zman is, okay, if you're Hasidish or Litvish, whatever it is, there's a Zman, poof, at that moment, both Shabbos and Yom Kippur Chal. So that's where you Chayiv too. Rashi has the kasha. Okay, says Rashi like this. It's not important to answer, but look what he says in terms of, to explain just the pshat here in the sugya. V'hani isur basachas ninu. You see this? Top line here, I made it up. V'hani isur basachas ninu, the ha b'hadei adodayos. They come together. The Shabbos and Yom Kippur come in together. Because when the day becomes holy. Miu. If Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds this a koil or moisef and other things, so forget about that they're coming together. I could say for another reason that Yechayev too. Why? So Rashi explains why Shabbos and Yom Kippur are both Isser koil. Even if one came in before, it doesn't matter. Let's say Shabbos comes in at 7 o'clock at night and Yom Kippur comes in at 8. You'd still be chayiv too. Why? Shabbos and Yom Kippur Isser moisefu. Why Shabbos is Isser moisefu? Do you have Yom Kippur kodim have a chayiv al zodim leches kares? V'chiyaz Shabbos it tells you about Mrs. Bezdin. Let's say Yom Kippur comes first. Let's say Yom Kippur is at 7 o'clock. Shabbos is at 8 o'clock. What happens when you Michal Yom Kippur? You don't get Misa B'dei, you don't get, Bezin can't kill you. Only Hashem. B'dei Shemayim. So the fact that when Shabbos comes in, they give you skila for being Michal Shabbos, you just added another layer to that Isser. And that layer could apply itself to the Isser number one. You have Isser number one, Yom Kippur, it's light. You don't, if you Michal Yom Kippur, Bezin can't touch you. Only Hashem. Then comes Shabbos, and you're over on one Isser, you chayiv for two, Yom Kippur and Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos is more stringent. It has a chiyuv skila by Bezdin, so it could apply itself on top of the Isser. There is Isser Chalal Isser. Yeah? You with me? Yishmak. And then Rashi does the other side around. Shabbos you're allowed to eat. It's a mitzvah to eat. Then comes Yom Kippur on top of that and says you're not allowed to eat. So now I was Isser Moisef. It's a koilo, he says. So me good Itzer Bachila Mishum Yom Kippurim. Since it's also to eat because of Yom Kippur, this is like Nam Melacha Mishum Yom Kippurim. So now the Melacha of Yom Kippur also becomes Asur. Rashi explains. Fine. So now let's see inside. So what does Rabbi Yosef Glili say? Rabbi Yosef Glili says you chayiv for two. For Shabbos, you mechal Shabbos and Yom Kippur, you chayiv two. So you see there, Rabbi Yosef holds Issa Koilo. Why are you telling me Rabbi Yosef Glili? Rava said before. Rabbi Yosef Glili doesn't hold the Issa Koilo. Or Rabbi Yosef Mefurish, he holds the Issa Koilo, you chayiv two. Otherwise, why you chayiv two? Was said already. So what's the answer? Very simple. We do this all the time in Shas. Check this out. Rabbi Yosef says Yechayiv two. How Yechayiv two? Because he holds a Visakailo. We just said Rabbi Yosef doesn't hold a Visakailo. The answer is boom, Epoch. Rabbi Yosef in fact holds one. It's Rabbi Kiva that holds Yechayiv two. And the story that answers the question. This is how we're going to explain it. We just flip it around. Okay, next thing. Now that we said according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, you only chayev one. If it's Shabbos and Yom Kippur, you only chayev one Isser. Listen to this. If a person forgot that it's Shabbos, but he knew that it's Yom Kippur, Yechayev a korban chatos. What about the reverse? Hazed b'Shabbos v'shogeg b'Yom Kippur. He forgot it's Yom Kippur, but he knew it's Shabbos. Potter. You're not chayev a korban at all. My time, what's the pshat? How do you explain it? It makes no sense. If a person forgot that it's Shabbos, he should bring a korban. But if a person forgot that it's Yom Kippur, he shouldn't bring a korban. Why not? Amar Abaye Shabbos kviyo v'kaima. Because Shabbos is there from Sheshis and Mebereshis. Yom Kippurim beidino de kokavile. Shabbos is first. So Memela what? Every Yom Kippur of every year, you need Bezin to say, oh, here's Rosh Chodesh. Today's Rosh Chodesh. Memela 10 days later is Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur wasn't there from Sheshis and Mebereshis. Shabbos is there every 7 days. It's Shabbos. Oh, my Rabbi, you don't make any sense. So if to write about the other kasu, doesn't matter. Once Bezin decided that Yom Kippur is on Tuesday, Yom Kippur is on Shabbos. So when it's Tzesek Chavim, it becomes Shabbos and Yom Kippur at the same moment. So you should be chayiv too. Elo, my Rabbi, says Rabbi, this whole idea we just said that Epoch, Rabbi Yosef Glili, Rabbi Kiva, it's all a mistake. Shmo Dahava, unbelievable shot over here. We're talking about 1 year in history where the Goyim took over and they made a Shema. They said, if you keep Yom Kippur, listen to what happened. If you keep Yom Kippur, we're going to kill you. So Chacham said, okay, let's do something. Yom Kippur is supposed to be on a Tuesday. There's no Yom Kippur this year on Tuesday because we're going to get killed. So we're going to celebrate Yom Kippur on Shabbos. We're going to fast on Shabbos. And we're not going to drive to Shul on Shabbos. And the Goyim are going to think that we're keeping Shabbos. We never drive on Shabbos, but really we're keeping Yom Kippur. But it's a fake Yom Kippur. It's not really Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur is really on Tuesday. The Mela, that's the Pshat. That year and that year only. If you forgot that it's Yom Kippur, you don't bring a korban. Of course you don't bring a korban. Why? It's not Yom Kippur, it's Shabbos. Yom Kippur is on Tuesday. But if you forgot that it's Shabbos, it was just a way of Rabbi Yochanan telling the world, telling the Yidden, that we're faking it. That's how, instead of saying, hey, Rabbi said, let's fake Yom Kippur, so he said, listen, if you forget that it's Yom Kippur, you're not chayav a korban this year. This year only. I just don't understand, there's no Beis HaMikdash then. Okay, we'll have to There's a big question in the Rishonim, Tosfos, and the Ramah talks about it. It's a major shaila lahalacha. Baruch Hashem, we don't know about this. We should never know about it. But this shaila comes out in the Holocaust. It happened 80 years ago. This shaila, when the goyim say you're not allowed to keep Yom Kippur, and if you don't keep Yom Kippur, we're going to kill you. So what right did the Gemara have to? The Chacham have a right to say cancel Yom Kippur on Tuesday and make it on Shabbos? You have to give up your life. Because it's a shmad. The Gemara says shmada. When there's a shmad, even if the goyim tell you to change your shoelaces to a different color, you're not allowed to listen to them. You have to kill yourself. There's no longer the 3 averos chamuros. Even the simplest minhag, you have to kill yourself for. So how are they allowed to change? It says shmada hava. How are they allowed to change it? So they say the gist of what they're saying is they never said you're not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to keep Yom Kippur. So Mela, all sorts of things, Ayin Sham, Ayin in the Achroinim and the Halacha. Baruch Hashem, it's not Halacha L'maisa for us. So you just know that there's a big nidin about it. V'chein, Shmuel Sholchim mitam de Yom Kippur and Shabbos Shavsu. V'chein Chazarah v'chol Zamru Kirov, and all the people that left Eretz Yisrael, they made a Yerida. Yeah, Nechoisei, they went down. In other words, they went from Eretz Yisrael. There's a big shmad, and they all had to run away from Eretz Yisrael. And they all said, yeah, the pshat is like this. That's what happened. It was a one-time thing in history. It's not pshat that Rabbi Yochanan said 1 or Rabbi Kiva said 2. Nothing to do with that. We're talking about a special year where there's no. If a person forgot that it's Yom Kippur on Shabbos, he's potter from a carbon. Why? Because it's not a real Yom Kippur. It's a fake Yom Kippur. Okay. Omar Rabbi Yehuda. So it says in the Mishnah, V'aloi b'nei Yaakov, the Isser of Gid Anasha was already Osir from the time of Yaakov Avinu. So what did they tell him? No, the Isser of Gid Anasha happened by Matan Torah at Har Sinai. So why does it mention Gid Anasha in Bereshis by Yaakov Avinu? Because Moshe Rabbeinu threw it in there to show him, to show Klal Yisrael where it originated from. Tanya, Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda, v'chinemar al kein lo yochlu b'nei Yaakov, v'lo nemar elo b'nei Yisrael. It doesn't say, it says, Akein lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael is Gid Anasha. V'lo b'nei Yisrael at Sinai. And Klal Yisrael wasn't called b'nei Yisrael until Har Sinai, and therefore the Isser is by Har Sinai, not before. Elo b'Sinai nemar. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu write in the Torah in Bereshis to show Klal Yisrael where it happened? Masav Rav, I don't understand something. It says, Vayisu b'nei Yisrael es Yaakov aviem. It already says b'nei Yisrael way before Har Sinai, that the Shvatim carried up Yaakov to Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, La'achar Ma'isa. There was the story of the Gid Anasha. 30 years later, approximately, they brought Yaakov Avinu out of Mitzrayim back to Eretz Yisrael. But that's way later. Then it says Bnei Yisrael. But before that, there's no Isser of Gid Anasha because they weren't called Bnei Yisrael then. But nevertheless, there's a third. Look, there's the story of Gid Anasha. There's Matan Torah over here, but there's also Klal Yisrael is called Bnei Yisrael, smack in the middle somewhere. So from that point, they should be chayiv on Gid Anasha. Vayisu Bnei Yisrael es Yaakov avim. It says Bnei Yisrael. So from that point on, when they left Mitzrayim, maybe it should be chayiv on Gid Anasha. It's really over here. Look at this. Vayomer lo elikim shimcha Yaakov lo yikar shimcha Yaakov kim Yisrael yishmecha. This is in Perek Lamed Hey, way later. What you're talking about is true. It says Vayomer lo Yaakov yomer shimcha kim Yisrael kisarisa lo kim Yisrael. That's the Malach. But doesn't mean the Malach said that's your name. It doesn't mean that that was his name then. He said it's the name. He was saying like Ruach HaKodesh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to call you later on the name. We don't consider this at all. In other words, this Yisrael is nothing. Later on, he was called Yisrael. So says the Gemara. So Nachama, what's the question? So from the time that Klal Yisrael, from the Shvatim took Yaakov Avinu out of Mitzrayim, let the Klal Yisrael be usher in Gid Anasha, not by Matan Torah. The Torah was what? There was different tzivuyim for mitzvahs. There was one Matan Torah. Well, it could have been at the time when the Malach hit his Gid Anasha. That's not. So what? Yeah. It's either a Matan Torah or by the Gid Anasha. You can't say, oh, sometime in the middle when they were called Yisrael. That for sure not. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.